Ooh, pressing all the wrong buttons. We got a fresh best of 3 for the semifinal here. Bottom left of Hecate, it is MaxPax. Top right, it is Reynor. Other side of the bracket is going to be TVT, Palooza. But it's not that I avoid TVT. I like it, even with Cyclones. Just that Clem is such a beast in it that it's almost always a very quick 2-0 versus any Terran who arrives in the Open Cup. Clem went from having his worst matchup to be TVT 2 years ago to being, as good as other matchups starting around last year to then dominating every Terran, like squishing them beneath his heel type of TVTs. So they've gotten a little, not fun. Fun in a way, but not fun in another way. Which, yeah, none of the commentators wanted to cast. So we're all in here casting the ZVP, because even if this does end up being a very standard, just like the last PvZ we cast was, just, the Zerg macros, Protoss macros, Blinkstalker attack, Zerg defense, Zerg counters, Zerg gets Broodlords, GG's. It could be like that again, but I still think it would actually be at least a longer game than the TVTs from Clem. But we'll get to that when we get to that. We are in the PvZ now, and it is MaxPax versus Reynor. So we just saw Hearthstone versus Reynor. And Hearthstone, as I was detailing in that cast, actually has one of the better win rates versus Reynor in the last 2 years. Just something happened where his style of play just makes Reynor doubt himself, perhaps. It seemed to be the case in Game 2, despite Reynor winning it. At Hearthstone's insistence on a ground-based Protoss versus Broodlords kind of was throwing Reynor off a little bit. But I don't know if MaxPax does that same style of play. I'd say that MaxPax generally be a more aggressive off of 2 and 3 bases than Hearthstone. Hearthstone is really a macro machine in PvZ. And MaxPax also has a good win record versus Reynor. I think, again, it's worth pointing out more so with the Hearthstone Reynor, because when you talk about their respective potential, you talk about the finals and victory for Reynor in a championship, and for Hearthstone, you usually cap out around round of 8. I don't mean to be rude, but that's the way that people would guess, right? For MaxPax, obviously you don't get to see him in an offline tournament, so we cap him out at not even appearing. It's even worse. But when it's online, when it's he's actually playing, we definitely include him in the list of champions for the European Open Cup. He is the most winningest Protoss player, although certainly not the most winningest player. Here, Marine still has more medals than him, I believe, and Clem now has so many more gold medals. But in the last 2 years, it seems like we also have MaxPax with a pretty good score against Reynor. Reynor still has the winning score, 28-20 in games, 10-7 in series. But, yeah, for how often these players appear in offline big championship international tournaments, Reynor gets the better results. Shocking. So you would think that he is favored, and I would say that he is. It just is really, really close. In fact, they've been literally just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth in the last year. Literally just ping-ponging. So Reynor recently won Masters Coliseum, so that means that MaxPax wins this time, right? That's the way it goes. All right, so now that we've covered their histories between each other, we can focus a little bit more on the game. Now, it's a really typical ZVP, so I don't really want to, but I've run out of other things to say. The Oracles are coming out. MaxPax, I guess, to further explain, I think he's more aggressive than Hearthstone. I think can be anyway. I mean, Hearthstone can throw in a good old cheese, as any good professional can do, but for MaxPax, I do see him as someone who is more likely to do a cheeky Forgeless Blinkstalker attack, which Hearthstone did try in Game 2. It just didn't do very much. To do a Resident Glaives opener, even though it's not really meta. To do... Okay, that's actually pretty much 2 things. MaxPax also very capable of just playing a very standard macro game. But there's a Twilight Council Thon's Forge. So I am expecting a Blinkstalker opener, a little bit of pressure, and then maybe just a little bit more damage from the pressure is maybe what I'm more so getting at. Since I couldn't think of the ways that MaxPax is that much more aggressive. Again, he's no Estrella. But yeah, I think it's a little more successful than what Hearthstone was doing. Hearthstone tried a faster charge on Archon attack that really didn't work, although it maybe should have. And then he tried the Blink Stalker attack that we might be seeing in this game as well, which didn't do anything. I don't remember really noting how it even happened. The Forge comes down fairly quickly after that Twilight Council, but you can see big emphasis on the Twilight Council blink timing. Triple Oracle intact, yet still. One of them helping out on the Adept pressure. Ready to go? Just watching him die. Just chilling. Just being like, oh, interesting. Used its revelation, and as such had no pulsar beam, so the poor Adept team got strangled. They got surrounded. I feel like that Oracle gets an F in babysitting. But okay. Other Oracle is forced to recall out. Now the Robo's on the way to a very typical opener that we see quite often. And the other one being that straight into Twilight Council, Forge, Charge, Archon. And there's that Stalker Ball, protected this time by multiple Oracles, so... One Oracle let their babies die. Hopefully 3 Oracles will save these particular babies, these Stalkers. They do not have Blink yet, but you're going for speed. Kind of over safety to a degree, I suppose. But you have a lot of confidence in your Oracle saving your butt. And this is hoping that Reynor is a little underdefended. Maybe you would have gotten a couple of Queens in that case. Or maybe you can just pick off units, and Reynor then continues throwing units into the meat grinder. Or... simply just provides pressure. A little bit of cleanup on the creep spread, couple of lings given freely, and maybe Reynor doesn't immediately drone up to 80, which is exactly what has happened. As MaxPax continues to save his Stalkers and continues to upgrade them, he also continues to have a bigger presence on the front lines when they appear. And before you know it, that bigger presence of Stalkers turns into a big presence of Archon, Storm, Stalker, Charge, Warp Prism. And then you've never replaced your creep spread, never gotten to a fully satisfactory position as a Zerg, you know, totally free to do what you want, up into your hive, up into your lurkers, whatever you want to do. You've always been under a little bit of pressure. And that is, so far, the biggest difference between this series and the series we just saw, is that Reynor doesn't simply deflect something and then go, okay, free reign. You macro, I macro, we're good. MaxPax always on the front lines, trying to find anything that he can. Not doing particularly well right now, however, is simply overestimating his chances there, blinking forward into an overwhelming number of Zerg units. Still has the Warp Prism intact, still has the Oracles helping out, and is not ready to give up the position quite yet. Not totally and entirely anyway, but really has been slapped back. As soon as I said he hadn't been, he'd been. 4th base set up behind this, though. MaxPax going up to 8 gases. Storm is done. Charge is on the way. +2 starts up. Reynor now has that deflection entirely. You know, just goes, okay, now it's time to macro, but he was macroing the entire time. 90 drones. 5 and 6 base actually coming up. Lurker down on the way, so a change up on the technology in this particular series. And he has his own wonderful set of upgrades. +2, +1 on the way. Overlord speed. Could be turning into drops later. You know, right now, it might just be for the Overseers, but could be turning into drops later. And then the Lurkers will be getting their upgrades very soon. MaxPax doesn't have a strong answer to Lurkers. Lurkers and Broodlords not quite fitting the same role for a few different reasons, but kind of coming down to that point of, do you actually have a direct counter to Lurkers? And both kind of sharing the same, quote-unquote, direct counter, which is air. That's more so the answer to both Broodlords and Lurkers than anything else. Although Harsum gave the ground army a good try. And you can try and play around Lurkers with the ground Protoss, but you usually have to be in control of the game to do that. You're the one that's throwing body after bodies of Zealots and Stalkers, you know, like a hero style of play. The Lurkers are desperately trying to run around to catch up to things. That's usually when Lurkers can be beaten by a ground army. Sometimes Disruptors make an appearance, right? They 2-shot the Lurker, but then as soon as you lose track of the Lurker army once, you're kind of screwed. Usually just getting into late game. And that's, well, one of the sticky things about PvZ, honestly. Overall, a fine matchup. Haven't really had any complaints about casting it or watching it or whatever, but it kind of is disappointing that there's not a lot more dynamic back and forth when it comes to the Lurker Wars. Protoss basically all agree that unless you're kind of already winning, the way to deal with Lurkers is to get into a Stargate. The way to safely do so requires some expertise. MaxPax is getting into carriers, but he can't just stay at home unless, Reynor is known to be passive, which Reynor's really not. So if he stays at home and does absolutely nothing, Reynor could just suddenly be on his side of the map and in his base with double Nidus Worm, which he just scouted with some run-by Zealots. And you don't want that. You don't want that. You want to, again, have some amount of pressure so the Zerg player has to follow you. There's the double Nidus Worm in effect. Overseer's being taken down, but not before they've already slapped down the buildings, one of which looks to almost complete. Zealots warped in at the nick of time. MaxPax realizing there must be another attack as well. There's not even a guarantee there's anything in those Nidus Worms. There's always the scary thought for a Protoss player. They could just be running up on the front lines, which is pretty much what's happening. Not all of the lurkers, but a decent amount. Taking down a lot of gateways, that defense as well. MaxPax's carriers do arrive, however, and also perhaps in the nick of time. Nothing really reliably shooting up here. Very few Hydra reinforcements thus far. No Queens on the front lines either, and no Corruptors. Spire is done, second one's on the way, but we're not moving over into that type of game quite yet by the looks of things. MaxPax is going to eventually defend against the lurker attack, but has taken some damage on his production and on his economy. Some, not a lot. He has done everything appropriate to get to a late-game Protoss position, and now it is Reynor's turn to respond with more of an air-based composition as well. I mean, he could try and play out his own ground army versus the Protoss air, but, you know, it is roughly similar for both of them, I guess. As soon as one person reaches air, you kind of want to be on your way to your own. That's still a lot of lurkers in play, though. 9 of them. Now a little more protected. A little more. I could also get Microbial Shroud, but... But, you know, do we know? Not usually. 11 Corruptors on the way with a couple of Vipers. Double upgrades from the Spire. Continuing to upgrade the ground and continuing to try and harass and catch the Protoss out of position. Excellent stasis trap. Halving the lurkers in... English. Halving the lurker numbers. There's still a very easy escape path for them, though, even when they get unlocked. That Nidus Worm, honestly a nuisance. You know, MaxPax, I guess, is afraid of being baited. Isn't killing the Nidus Worm. Or maybe he thinks it's ultimately a moot point. Nidus Worm comes up again 2 seconds later. That's a big ol' army from the Protoss attacking on the left side. Only a few reinforcements left behind to deal with that lurker run by, and Reynor might be a little surprised by this too. Not quite ready to defend against it. He has some Corruptors. Is it enough? 14 to 6 carry. Yeah, he's got enough. There's really not a lot of anti-air here. MaxPax playing a dangerous game. Couple of Storms, couple of Archons, not much more. Vipers in play too, so they're going to abduct away from the Archon shots. Get stormed a little bit, but not a lot. And Reynor is going to take care of things before that base gets destroyed. MaxPax respecting the Zerg position. It's not going to over-dedicate. Kind of backing away, but not, not entirely. Reynor thinks he is. Tries to place down Spore Crawlers, doesn't work out. But more Corruptors will be added in. More energy on the Vipers will come in. And the Carriers will be even more in trouble if they're not careful. 2 Carriers coming on the backside. Thought they were protected, and they kind of were. There's a lot of damage going on to the Corruptors, but not enough to actually kill them. And that is just a kick in the nuts, isn't it? So many red and orange Corruptors, none of them actually dead. Lost Archons, lost Carriers. The hatchery got killed, but only 3 drones. And Reynor has 4,000 minerals in the bank, so certainly not an equivalent trade there. MaxPax is still maxed out. So even though it didn't look exactly pretty, it's not the worst thing, as he also managed to take a 5th base behind all of this aggression. Reynor's Corruptors are still injured. They do not heal particularly fast, not like Mutas, right? So that is a problem. If the storm comes down, there is no other storm. Kicking the nuts once again. Some Stalkers getting the last shots, kills 2 or 3 Corruptors, I believe. 8 in total have gone down, so not too shabby, not really worth 4 Carriers. Reynor expands over to the right side. Remember, he double expanded at some point. Has Nidus from protecting his bases, which I love. Go back to classic Nidus canals, right? He's continuing to expand to the rich gold. Half-rich gold, I guess. And Nidus from to the south finally gets destroyed. There's a bit of an alert to Reynor, but not in time to save this base. Not a problem for now. Not a problem for now. Not a problem for the next 2 minutes, but Reynor will eventually need more resources as we get into a very typical PvZ late game, which is the sturdy, reliable, sometimes better, sometimes not, late game Protoss army taking more efficient trades against the Zerg, expending all of the resources of the map. Classical. Upgrades continuing along for both players. MaxPax never fallen too far behind in that regard. Another Nidus Worm pops up and is killed. Same with the hatchery. MaxPax's movement with his army is really quite good. I mean, I really do want to emphasize how good it is of a Protoss to try to gauge this stuff correctly. To not just move out into the map like that, which is really intimidating, because a Zerg player could be anywhere. They're so fast, right? But also to keep it up, even when he's seemingly been defended. He doesn't ever entirely pull away. He pulls away to safety, sure, but then it's really never that far back. So then he pounces back onto the base. The Zerg's like, what the hell, man? And then he gets a couple of quick, easy kills. It might not seem like a lot, but it really is. Kiwi Bulldog gave the 13 months. You know, and that's something that Hearthstone was doing really well, too. I think in Game 2, his movement was very good with his army. And he also, I think, was at times constantly on the map, you know, never fully pulling back, but sometimes he would fully pull back. And that gave Reynor a lot of time to breathe and think about his next move. Or in this game, I think Reynor has had to react a lot more. It's not just Reynor saying, well, I'm going to get all of the bank and all of the upgrades and all of the armies, and I'm going to hit you over and over and over again, and you just have to try and defend. There's more of a push and pull. And that MaxPax, I wouldn't say is winning, but is doing a damn good job trying. Yes, we did have a mothership go down, but it is what it is. Another mothership is going to pop out. This is the new and improved question mark mothership. So a little bit cheaper, a little bit smaller, a little bit faster, cooldown base, so on and so forth. But pretty much it's the exact same thing it used to, which is be a target for the abduct. You know, a couple of spells going down there, more than a couple, all ending in a bit of a wash. Most importantly, at this point, Reynor is unable to get this base to the left. MaxPax is getting the base. And, honestly, could even try and get the base that Reynor wants. Wouldn't be too shabby if he did. Obviously, Reynor is the one that's going to need more resources. He is the Zerg player. So literally taking them from Reynor is a good move. Excellent recall. I do forget sometimes Mothership is used in clever ways, not just being the abducted Mothership. And that was a clever way indeed. MaxPax instantly becoming a threat on the right side, taking down Reynor's mining bases. Lickety split, one goes down. Other one might be too well protected, but overall good movements. And a recall on the Nexus could provide him extra movement should he need it, but he doesn't. Reynor is again the one reacting to him. Reynor never quite getting to a perfect Zerg army, by the way. I wouldn't say this is perfect at all. And actually, at this point, is just worse. Storms aplenty, Archons aplenty, Carrier is actually very well upgraded. Corruptor's getting awfully low. As you can see, Reynor just trying to dive in and hopefully win, but Lurker's not even a part of some of the fight. And the Corruptor is all going down in the blink of an eye because they went from orange to red to dead. Suddenly, pop, 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 they go. And MaxPax's army was just significantly better. GG's. It was 2 minutes ago that I thought that as I said it, MaxPax isn't necessarily winning, but he's doing a really good job. And then he just won. And he made that look like a dismantling at the end. You thought he was having some trouble with the Rubik's Cube, and then he, because he's like staring at it, and he's like, and you're like, oh no, is he gonna have trouble? And then he just freaking solves it. Game number 2 on Solaris. In the top right it is MaxPax, bottom left it is Reynor. Pretty lengthy game number 1, ending almost abruptly. MaxPax played a positional game quite well. I know, it's usually a term used for something siege-based. Tanks and Liberators sieging up correctly, Lurkers sieging up correctly. Protoss don't really have it, to be honest. Not so much. But, something a little slower going, but it's positional as in he was just constantly moving. He was always finding the weak point of Reynor so that he was able to kill the hatcheries, which I was saying wasn't a problem, and I would still kind of contest that. It wasn't the problem of adding to his bank, but it was a problem of his ability to get comfortable, for sure. And then have a safe transition. Because if you have your bases up, it also means that you have the map control up, and you have your creep control up, and so you have, literally at times, you have more time, because you have to kill the hatchery before they kill you. So, while he didn't necessarily need the resources from the hatcheries, he did absolutely need them to feel comfortable in the game. And that's what MaxPax never let him feel, is comfortable. And then Reynor never being able to feel comfortable, always trying to react to his opponent, while also, at times, trying to get his own little jab in. He wasn't inactive, he just wasn't able to take control over the game. Never really got to an actual great late game Zerg, I would say. Vipers, great. Corruptors, great. Upgrades, good. Lurkers, not as much. I mean, really, the best late game is going to be Broodlord, Corruptor, Infestor, Viper, Spellcasters, right? It's pretty much the best. Maybe some other units, some such lurkers, roaches, something to deal with run-bys or inflict their own run-bys. Okay, sure. But otherwise, Reynor really did not get to a comfortable position. One in which he had the map, he had the bank. Its bank was good, but maybe not the best. And had the transition in mind. To say, well, I can go for this type of game and play this type of game. And by that game, I mean the kind of war of attrition, Broodlord versus carriers, mass static defense, you know. Never got to that point. And so MaxPax, figuring it out, did kill the spellcasters, which was very important, and then took the battle. But even without taking rid of the Vipers, he had a lot of units left over. It did not end up being that close of a fight at the end. It's a really difficult thing to make it look that way, I think. Even more difficult than maybe we're thinking of, to make the precision surgical cut at that moment to make the Protoss army look overwhelming against the Zerg, even if the Zerg's army isn't the perfect late game one. Thank you, Joe Pro, for the 9 months. Yeah, no cheese, just MaxPax really loving to block out the natural hatchery. Made sure to do so. Also getting some consistent scouting with the Adept into the Oracle standard. As standard goes. I don't know if MaxPax will change things up. He was really start to finish playing a similar game. The compositions changed and the supplies changed. But from the start of his Blink Stalker move out, when he had like 6 Stalkers and no Blink, to the end there, he was playing a game in which I emphasized was one of constant action. Constantly being in Reynor's face. Sometimes he was actually punching Reynor in the face, which is not good. You don't like to be punched in the face. But other times, he was just waving his hands around like a typical annoying sibling. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. And that adds a lot. If you can imagine being the person who can't react. Mom! It's annoying. And it makes you concerned about other things. And in the game of StarCraft, it especially makes you concerned that they will turn the I'm not touching you into a punch in the face. Which your siblings shouldn't be doing. If they are, that's probably problematic. Queen's not quite in position to stop the drones from going down, and Spore's not quite well timed either, so while it's not a big amount of damage, 3 drones instead of 0, maybe 1. Zerg players already doing the whole like teeth gritting thing, you know? Like, +1 melee coming out quick here for Reynor. Oracles, I don't believe, scouted that. They're mostly in the natural in the 3rd. Twilight Council did come down first and foremost, yet Blink has not started. I think MaxPax just straight up missed macroed right there. 100 extra gas before starting that Blink. It means Blink and +1 look like they're well timed together, but I'm actually not sure that was the intention. Yeah, I think he just was focusing on his Oracle micro. Very, very small detail. But that can sometimes be brutal. If he's going to go for the Stalker, move out again, try to protect the Stalkers with the Oracles, and the Stalkers have 8-second later blink than usual, that 8 seconds could be the time in which the 20 Zerglings pop out and actually do get us around, even if the Oracles are still there. Very specific scenario, but it could happen. Ling scouts the attempted move out. At this point, very expected, anticipated. Reynor wants to deal with this with as little as possible while still taking it seriously. That is the conundrum of Zerg. Ling run by, or not run by, trying to surround. Knows the stasis trap somewhere, and there absolutely was. So good pull away there from Reynor. Adept's taken care of. A bit on the nose, perhaps, at this point. The Lings were totally prepared for that. MaxPax is just waving his hands in front of his brother's face while expanding. This was never intended to do big damage. It was intended to get a little bit of scouting, a little bit of interruption of the droning, maybe some units, and if they are totally underprepared, then perhaps you actually do kill queens or cancel the hatchery. Spire's on the way, perhaps... No, this is a different map, actually. I thought Reynor maybe was doing the same thing on the same map as the last series, but he is not. No, he's definitely not. But he is going into Spire, so he's changing up the way that he's playing, even though MaxPax hasn't changed his up too much. That is a big Ling swell on top of the Stalkers that were corralled. That the Pulsar Beam of the Oracles did help. The wall behind the Stalkers helped tremendously. A full surround there would have been devastating. And MaxPax was maybe a little over-aggressive. Reynor did make enough Lings to catch that, but this is always that Zerg dilemma. Yeah, he made enough Lings to catch you and push you entirely back, but he made enough Lings. So he didn't make 15 more drones. So Reynor's not at 80 drones, something that he has been at this fast in some other games. So MaxPax didn't even lose that many stock. Oh no, 7. Okay, that's actually a good amount. I thought he lost like 4. Whoops. 7's pretty good. But we also have, I think, a bigger issue, which is that MaxPax does not know for a fact that it is Spire play. Now, he saw a Roach Warren, yet no Roaches, but might not be, you know, that's not necessarily connecting the dots. It just might mean that Reynor thinks he can survive without Roaches, right? And he might even be getting into a hive, for all he knows. But that is a real concern. The Spire is done. The Mutas have been built, 16 of them very shortly. And MaxPax does not have any knowledge. No cannons that I can see. 1 at the 3rd base. That is it. 4th base protected by the backing away of the Stalkers regardless, I suppose. But the Mana Natural, not looking so hot. And Reynor, I think he really knows that he has the upper hand here. He knows that he's successfully gotten to Mutas uninterrupted. So he is dedicating to the Mutas. Not just a mere 8, rather going up even to 19. The Stalker Warpin's hardly enough to do anything to stop these Mutas from wreaking havoc on the probe line. And while MaxPax certainly has responded as quickly as possible with cannons being produced, the Mutas have done a decent first job. And the first job that Mutas have can sometimes be the game-ending job as well. Worse Protosses, and certainly worse positions, would have already lost 20 probes, and depowered an upgrade, and lost more Stalkers to this many Mutas unscouted right off the bat. So it didn't end the game, but it was still a very successful first run-in by the Mutas, which could possibly only get worse as time goes on. More upgrades for the Mutas. Reynor has +2 on the ground for the Lings. Rich Vespian Geyser as well, don't forget that. And just the mobility of this army is so freaking scary. No Archons available as of yet. In fact, it was a Robotics Bay, I believe. Yeah, Robotics Bay on the way. That's choice. That is him literally just going into Colossus instead of trying to go into Archons. And there's, you know, Archons obviously shoot up and down, which is quite helpful. Colossus would be really helpful against Ling Bailing specifically, and also well and dandy, but they're not here yet. But Stasis Traps just saved so many Stalkers from certain death. My goodness. That actually might be the reason that MaxPax holds here. However, that's still a lot of Zerg and a lot of chaos. I mean, the Banelings perfectly circling around the Stalkers. Hot damn those Stasis Traps. Stalker's now able to actually kind of, you know, split Marine Micro. Mitigate the damage. Only 8 probes went down instead of the entire probe line. A Zealot run by, unsuccessful. At least pulls back the army for a moment. I would say overall not worth the supply. Not worth the 800 minerals. But MaxPax, I'm still impressed with that hold. It probably was not good enough. A lot of Mutas with their upgrades. So this is Trap. It's the last one, as the Oracles did die in the earlier engagement. More Stalkers blinking down from the high ground, trying to protect the economy, but even MaxPax can tell that this has just gone on too far. So he is going to tap out, let that game lay behind him, and move on to game number 3. Just one of those games, right? Oh, no, Mutas! Well, all right then. Oceanborn for our final battleground. The top left for Psystorm, he is MaxPax. And the bottom right for Basilisk, he is Reynor. We do have our brackets complete. Flam was able to 2-0 Kelazur and is now waiting in the grand finals for either Reynor or MaxPax Both familiar finals, very familiar in the last month. They've been the only finals in the last month, I think. In Korea, not Korea. And the only one to actually take down Clem was MaxPax. But then the last time the two played, Clem took a pretty convincing 2-0. So Clem's still much the favorite to win any Open Cup, European or North American. But both Reynor and MaxPax put up a really good fight. I will be quite selfish and say that Reynor versus Clem have had the better, more intense games. So I would like to see that again. But there are times where MaxPax and Clem have really banger PvZs. So, MaxPax unable to scout the mutas. Maybe hindsight 2020 could have been like, oh, well, I guess he was only on Lings, and he did successfully get a Rich Vespian Geyser, and he has been going for more mutas recently. Okay, you know, maybe he could have thought more so into it, I suppose. But like I was saying, even though at a certain time you expect to see roaches, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going into mutas. They could be holding off on roaches just because they think they don't need them. Because they're trying to get to a faster hive, because they're trying to get more drones, because they don't even need to show the roaches. The Lings are doing fine. They might be building roaches. Every time you think, oh, they're not building them, they're not going roaches. Oh, wait, they're the roaches. I'm sure that happens a lot to even the pros. But one thing is for certain, no matter how much credit you can give the possibilities of something else having happened, MaxPax did not get enough scouting. And there's a lot of reasons to why it's hard to get scouting, and why StarCraft 2 was a hard game to remember to get scouting. Whatever. But at the end of the day, that's exactly what kills you, is surprise mutas. So MaxPax might be a little more gung-ho about scouting with his oracles, instead of using them completely on the front lines. Perhaps that was exactly why Reynor threw in a muta build, besides that he's been experimenting more with them, or that he generally likes playing to it if he thinks he can safely get to it. There is that other option, which is that he realized that MaxPax wasn't doing a whole heck of a lot of scouting. He was using all of the oracles to defend the stalker push, and he was sending out no hallucinations, no harassment that ended up in the main base, right? So he was going to almost assuredly get to mutas without being scouted. Now, getting to mutas without being killed can be another question, depending on what the Protoss is doing. But again, MaxPax is going into pressure, expand, not real attacks. So that's something that Reynor might also have been predicting was going to happen again, taken advantage of. Do you get away with it again? Probably not, because MaxPax should be a little more on the ball about it. One Oracle diverts away from the front lines to get a scout into the main, to try and at least get a scout on what's producing from the larva, what's the gas count like in the third or fourth or whatever. Are there actually any roaches? You know, is the roach more wiggly jiggly? Is it researching? Whatever it is. But having surprise mutas, that many surprise mutas, really, I mean, most Protoss players wouldn't survive, I think. Yeah, I don't know what he could have done better. Oracle is once again being the play. No surprise there. Reynor going for that +1 melee, it looks like again, too. Does once again take a couple of more drones damage than one would hope to very, very early on in the game to the first Oracle. But c'est la vie. Second Oracle not going to get the chance to do so at the third base. Queen's now properly protecting every drone line. Solar Council and Forge coming down at the same time. Could, you know, this is very specifically looking into, but it could mean he's going into charge instead of blink. And not only because of the double buildings I'm seeing, but also because maybe the blink stalker thing is kind of done at this point. Okay, I got one game with it, and you got a game against it. Like, I'm not gonna do it anymore. Could be. Robo coming down as well. I mean, we could also just have a change into, blink +1 into Colossus. But it is gonna be charge. It is going to be the charge. And possibly an Archon Zealot attack. Similar to what Harsum tried, but kind of mistimed. And had to play a much tougher game because of it. Oracle's flying on it. Oh, Jesus. Barely survive. Barely. With triple Oracle still in effect. 2 more drones go down. Total of 4 drones killed. An Overlord died. I guess the scouting one to the Stalker. Which, by the way, not just 2 Stalkers critted, but 3. And I know that sounds weirdly specific. Like, what are you getting at? But honestly, since he's gone into Stalker pressure, one of the only things that you can really scout at that point that Reynor just tipped in there is what they're producing. Overlord's not going to get in with that Overlord speed, and if he scouts again, he might see Zealots. But he doesn't know. 100%. Could be a little tricky. Could be. Speaking of scouting, perhaps now Reynor's time to miss out a little bit. Because if you do have only Ling Queen against someone who's building Archon Charge, it's not wrong to say that the Archon Charge is supposed to have a little bit of an advantage. It just didn't work out that way the one time we saw it today. So this is why I am emphasizing. And also, if you're going to try and do Spire play again, this is the exact type of attack that can straight up kill you. So I think we had reads from both players into first game 2 from Reynor, then game 3 from MaxPax, reading into what their opponent's going to try and get away with based off of previous interactions. Warp Prism has now been seen, Charge's also been seen, Archon's actually already made. Oh, this time around Zealots were pulled back. So now everything is working together, and that is a huge difference. This means that this army is just better than Reynor's army, even as Reynor tries to spam as many Lings out as possible. How many Lings does it take to the center of an Archon Zealot army? Like 200. It's a lot. And with the Warp Prism still intact, reinforcing with more Zealots, this could be a game over in favor of MaxPax. Queens trying their best to transfuse their way through to victory. Let these Lings actually get this around. One Archon will be popped, second Archon will be popped, and Zealots are getting thinner and thinner in numbers. Reynor barely making the hold happen with pure Queen Ling. MaxPax perhaps getting a little overly aggressive, going all the way to the 4th base to get the damage done, was really far away from his Warp Prism. So the reinforcements were later, and there was no juggling of the Archons. 2 big things that maybe could have ended the game right there, because of course the other aspect of the defense here for the Zerg player is that building pure Ling will only last you so long, especially with your queens on the front lines. They're not injecting at that point. So you could maybe just tire the Zerg out. Well, that's kind of now been a missed opportunity, as Reynor has had time to breathe, has had time to get his Roach Warren up, and is even thinking he can get away with actually building mutas. 12 mutas are on the way. He's absolutely right about it. MaxPax is full-on retreating and has less to work with against those mutas than the previous game. Colossus, do not shoot up, my friends. He's no Gusta. No cannons yet again in the mineral lines. No knowledge of the mutas. MaxPax about to get bopped twice by the muta play. And the mutas do reveal themselves, but I think it's actually a very nice reveal as far as if you're going to be revealed, right? You get to kill the Warp Prism, kill the Zealots, and still you still get the jump. I mean, just because they saw it before they arrived in your mineral base, in your mineral line, doesn't mean it's that great. I do love MaxPax's decision here to just go for constant aggression. I think this was planned from the get-go, but it's kind of also a plan that would be the only one that works, is to try and initiate some type of base trade. Reynor does have army back at home besides the mutas, but Baneling speed not done. Ravager's not quite completed, trying to get on the action now. And now they are, surprisingly enough. They did not get killed. Those Banelings crash right into the Archons, and the combined DPS of the small Protoss army was not enough to overcome Reynor's defenses back at home. Meanwhile, Stalkers bleeding out to the mutas in the main base of MaxPax. Reynor once again going to the finals to face Clem, whether it's in the European Open Cup or the North American one. This seems to be destiny for the two. Once again, MaxPax probably had a good opportunity with the Zealot Archon, and if there was faster reinforcements with Archon juggling, I really don't think Ling Queen would have done it. But the pause was good enough. The position was good enough for Reynor. And the rest of the game seems to be smooth sailing. Going on to 5 bases, actually at a lower economy than MaxPax, so that is something to keep in mind. MaxPax just fully saturating his 4th base, gas is coming up as well. And the mutas were not totally invested into, so that's not the main problem. So as MaxPax continues to invest into his ground, he's doing the right thing. The problem is he's still behind 40 army supply. Not overcomeable. Not. Something that he could overcome. As a Protoss player, Jesus Christ, 28 probes went down there. That is actually enough for Reynor just to evacuate. Yeah. Yep, thanks. Okay, bye. Protoss players have overcome a 40, 50, even 60 supply deficit against Zerg hundreds of times. Very common in the history of the matchup. But Reynor isn't only on a superior army supply. He is getting to his Vipers as well. That's going to entirely nullify the Colossus, unless the High Templar feedbacks can actually come in. And that might not even be enough. The Vipers are the easier win, for sure, but I don't think they're necessary. Reynor with an almost 60 army supply lead. Equal upgrades right now. Did decimate MaxPax's economy, 28 probes. Not easily rebuilt, but fortunately MaxPax is already on a very, very high probe count, so it's not the worst economy. But Zealot's not able to defend the probe line, so 10 more probes go down in the blink of an eye. And Reynor is just waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The 4th base will not mine in this game, as the entire probe line is once again killed, and this time around the Nexus will also fall. And that's something that MaxPax really cannot afford to replace. 400 minerals plus the time. So you have to wait to get the Nexus up, to get the probe saturated, to get the shield battery overcharges available again. MaxPax, SOL in this game. Reynor just has to decide how to actually finish it. So he's got the technology, he's got the resources, he's got the upgrades. Now he has superior upgrades. He's going to have Ultras as an option too, which can get an easy surround on this type of army. The Archons are sturdy, but an Ultra surround will still do the trick. You want those Immortals in there to pack a punch. But we might not even get there. MaxPax might try and go for Desperation all in. You know, nothing else is working, right? And might get surrounded by the non-Ultra army, which Reynor is currently on, maxed out. MaxPax is really good at trying to make comebacks happen, though. Whether it's most well known in PvT, I guess, as he seems like he's always doing it versus Clem. But he's very good in all the other matchups as well. He does know how to play the Protoss race to the most obnoxious that it can be, and that's how I think the comebacks work for Protoss. It's the wave in your hands in front of your opponent's faces like an annoying sibling. It's the rightfully timed Zealot run by, not just the Zealot run by. It's that one timing where you're just like, come on, that was the 1 second that I was vulnerable. That's what MaxPax is really good at. MaxPax not dead yet. 4th base actually does get created once more. Saturation will happen soon. Not because he has a healthy number of probes necessarily, just running out of minerals elsewhere. He even decides that +3 is worth investing into, which I think is correct, just as a huge chunk of change when he's not maxed out. Another Spire's on the way, as Reynor no doubt looks towards Greater Spire as the actual ending. Didn't even realize how cleverly placed the first one was, because there was no scouting to even attempt to scout it. So it wasn't a point to look at it, but yeah, that's pretty clever. With an only 20 army supply difference, MaxPax is more than equipped to handle this, although lack of storms. 1 feedback is available, but not 2, and it's not even happening, actually. The Colossus get pulled forward, abducted into the Roaches. The Banelings very calmly roly-poling on past the Archons into the 4th base, but now are not here to deal with the Zealots that come in on the backside. Reynor's Roaches caught awfully off guard, and those Banelings did not deal as much damage as you would hope. They must have killed at least some of the Archons. That was so many Banelings. They must have killed some of the Archons, but they only killed 8 probes. And there's still a decent amount of Archons left over at 6. Those Zealots being able to jump purely on top of the Roaches was really good for the Protoss. Those Banelings are usually just, you know, Zealots puffa. So again, MaxPax is making all the right moves to make this comeback happen. Reynor remembering he has some mutas, though, is also being the annoying kid. You're touching me. He very much is touching me. Very much is punching him. And his probe count, 7 probes go down. MaxPax tries to use some Zealot run-bys, but unfortunately denied by Queens and Transfuses, and denied by Ultras that do have their chitinous plating. Not that they really need it against pure Zealot. Well, that many Zealots. That is another Zerg Horde looking to end the game, as MaxPax once again has his 4th base under attack. Probes are dead. Nexus is dead. Army, actually a good size, to be honest, but can he defeat the army of Reynor? All the Banelings rolling on in here. Shield battery kind of involved, but not really. One Immortal helping out against the Ultras does get taken down. MaxPax going to make one hell of a stand with his quality Protoss army, but it's still not good enough. Not when he continues taking probe damage, continues losing his 4th base, and ultimately is losing his army. I mean, if he was taking no army losses, then he might still be maxed out, but he's not doing that either. He is taking very efficient engagements and really making Reynor work for the win. But it is inevitable. Not like Thanos inevitable, because he actually ended up dying, so he's kind of lame, actually. This is actually inevitable. Reynor is up 100 supply, 8 Ultra Remax, and MaxPax just doesn't want to admit defeat. He knows that he is very, very, very unlikely to win this game, but he is not one to quit too soon. He is going to go for his last hurrah. He's got 7 cotton balls, 2 laser giraffes, and that's really the bulk of his army. Couple of, what, dead DTs and a stalker? Is that what they are? Can we not do Ultra and a throw, by the way? I mean, these are a lot of Ultras. If MaxPax had approximately 6 Immortals instead of 4. No, I'm just kidding. Reynor does win. Reynor will win 2-1 and move on to the finals to face Clem in yet another best of 5.